Thank you everyone for attending tonight. I'm Alderman Scott Waguespack, and welcome to the 32nd Ward and a lot of other districts and congressional districts. Thank you everyone for attending tonight on such short notice for this rapid response action and Know Your Rights session. I want to thank the staff and especially Principal Margaret Byrne from Yon. Let's give them a hand. We met last week and asked if we could put this together here at Yon, and they were very responsive, very proactive in making sure that we could get this set up here. And they also have started with their own group of parents and families, making sure that they could have a rapid response team to make sure that our parents and our children at this school, like all those around Chicago, are protected from what they are seeing and experiencing over the last several weeks. And it's very important. I know a lot of you have children. My children go to Pulaski Elementary in Bucktown, and we are seeing the same types of things throughout the city. No matter where we live in this city, we want to make sure that our children and our families are protected, and you being here today is a first step towards doing that, so thank you again. I also just want to say quick thanks to Jenny, Victoria, and my staff, Elizabeth, in the ward office, who helped coordinate all the elected officials here, and the legal representatives that we have from the different organizations who are going to talk us through the rapid response action session and Know Your Rights. You know, many of us never really expected to see this in our own country, but here it is. We're repeating the worst of history. And Chicago, though, has been united in opposing this illegal and unnecessary attacks against our families, our neighbors, our communities, and our whole democracy here in the United States. And our actions are necessary because we cannot see a repeat of history. So it's important for all of us to fight back, but it's important to make sure that we do not engage in violence. There are a lot of people who think that fighting back is to maintain our democracy is drinking the Kool-Aid. And I would say it's just the opposite, because when we see people drinking Kool-Aid, it's the people that are from cults, it's the people from who do activities that undermine democracy and undermine our constitutional rights, and that's what we're seeing today. And none of us accept kings. We kicked kings out 250 years ago, and we're not going to let it happen today. So don't forget, this weekend is the No Kings March down at Grant Park. I think it's at noon and on Saturday, so hopefully we'll see a lot of you there. But this is really, again, a fundamental issue with our Constitution, with our democracy. And it starts with the people. It starts with people in this room and the people who've been out there fighting on the street. I talked to a few of you as I came in, and you were telling me about the different places that you've been to around this city to make sure that our families are protected. That has to continue until this stops. And it won't stop until they get the message in DC that the people are not going to accept this. So again, thank you for all of you who are here today. We've got a few of our other elected officials who are going to say a few words. Then we'll have our legal
warrants. One primarily serves adult males, and 2 weeks ago they were raided. And the staff there told me exactly what happened. 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 cars pull up, masked, unmarked vehicles, and people are chased across the neighborhood, and 5 people were taken away. We also visited another facility that provides housing for young women in their teens and early 20s. So when folks ask me what they can do, these folks need money and they need volunteers, and I encourage you to help. Some need donations, both monetary and otherwise, and some just need you to spread the word. I also met with the ICE rapid responders in the back of the yards this morning. They were late to the meeting because of ICE action, and they had to leave the meeting early because ICE action with tear gas within the neighborhood. So I'm going to get their training and I'm going to join them. I think we all need to participate. We have ways that you can contact with them to play a role wherever this is taking place. The other thing we did today is we were in the back of the yards at a restaurant that's been open for 52 years. It's the 3rd generation, and lunchtime is virtually empty. So we met with the businesses in the neighborhood who all had painful discussions of what's taking place. People who plan events, flowers, dresses, and so forth. People are canceling all those events. The restaurants and most of these businesses have lost 20 to 50% of the business. Something else you can do, which is very enjoyable, is go eat in these places. Bring your friends. Shop Pilsen, shop Little Village, back people up. Now is the time to do just that. I think what we can take from most of this is a lesson that our late friend John Lewis used to tell me all the time. It's really where we are now. And when I hear of white parents having to volunteer to walk brown kids to school, and we hear a president of the United States say that cities can be training grounds for our military to attack that inner enemy, I'm reminded of John's words, and they're the most important ones to remember at this time. He said, we may have come on over here in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. And we sure as hell are, and I'm glad I'm in the boat with you. God bless. And I want to bring on our extraordinary County Commissioner, Richard Degnan, and as Chewy Garcia and Danny Davis and I can say, Cook County Board, cradle of Congress. Cook County Commissioner, Richard Degnan.
Thank you. I got one. Thank you, everybody, and I want to thank former Cook County Commissioner, Congressman Mike Quigley, for those comments, and really I'd like to thank Scott Waguespack, who is a close friend of mine as well, and for organizing this evening, along with our other electeds that you'll hear from tonight, and really who I want to thank is all of you for being here tonight as well. So, you know, I'm not going to reiterate what was just said, but as a county board commissioner, we do see a lot that goes on at the city with our city colleagues and partners. We are in close coordination with our state partners at all times. We always say we want governments to work together, and that is imperative that we do that at this time. I know that I see a lot of concerned faces out there, right? And I feel like this is war. I feel today that there is a war in my city, a war in my state, and a war in my country. Now, I know that none of us thought that we would be here today, but the reality of it is it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And the way to really staunch the flow, the way to really eliminate what's going to happen in the future is if all of you get really upset, really angry, you are out in the streets, you are talking to your friends, you are talking to your neighbors. This should not be political. This should not be Republicans against Democrats. It just shouldn't be happening. The kind of force that we're seeing used on our neighbors and our friends, it's against the Constitution. We should all care about these things. It should not be politicized. So what I would love to do and see everybody do is get out there and say, we are not going to take this. Because if we are all in it together, if we are all saying that to our friends and neighbors, it's going to inhibit the federal government from carrying out these types of plans here. I think we all know that knowledge is power, and community is power, and action is power. And each one of us has that in our hands, in our homes, and in this community. So as a part of the county board, one of the things that we work on is working with the Office of the Chief Judge. 2 weeks ago, we had a resolution requiring every single elected official and appointed official at the county alert us as a county board if there was any ICE activity in any of their brick and mortar buildings and any of their premises or anything that they've done. We also asked the Office of the Chief Judge to ensure that ICE was not allowed to be on court premises. As Congressman Quigley said, and as Alderman Waguespack said, we are seeing people come into court in order to facilitate justice, to be a plaintiff or a defendant, to be a domestic violence victim, to be an advocate, and they are getting chased out of courtrooms by ICE. I think we all recognize how completely ridiculous that is. You want justice, you want a space where people can litigate their claims, but at the same time you're chasing people out. There's no rationale for that. So we asked the Office of the Chief Judge and Timothy Evans to ensure that that wasn't going to happen. So he just issued a standing order this week saying that can't happen. The next thing we did was go to the sheriff's office and we said, okay, well, he's issued this order, who's gonna enforce it? How are we gonna make sure that this is not happening? And the sheriff, they're the ones that are in those courthouses. They're enforcing the fact that they have to be safe places. Like I said, the county all has to work together. And I would love for each one of you to hold all of the county people, all of your elected officials accountable, to ask questions. What's going on? We have an emergency management system that's connecting with our Broadview friends and neighbors there to make sure that there is a safe space for people to exercise their First Amendment rights, but at the same time try to keep people safe. That is a very narrow line between allowing people to make sure that their First Amendment rights are valid, that they can protest, but at the same time, they're not right up against the fence that thankfully came down 2 days ago. All of this is to say is the county is very active in this space. We will continue to force activity in this space, continue to be vocally against the federal administration for all of the negative, terrible things that they're doing. And I'm hoping in time that this will create a chilling effect and they will reduce the violence that we're all seeing here today. So I can't wait to hear more about the Know Your Rights. I'm so happy to see you all here. If there is anything my office or I can do, again, my name is Bridget Degnan and thank you for being here tonight. I'd like to next introduce my good friend Ann Williams, who is our state representative, and Jamie Andrade, who is the other state representative in the state.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Just rolled in from Springfield. This is my colleague, Jamie Andrade. We share the On community. I wanted to start by letting you know I took a photo of you all, and I'm going to share it in my group chat with colleagues just to let them know that we love them, we support them, and we're here for them. So thank you for being here. As far as what's going on in the state level, we are, like everyone, just grappling with the horrific images, the reality of what we're dealing with, and I won't repeat what my colleagues have said. I do have a question, though, for the group. How many here have personally known someone that's been taken, or a family member? Okay, a fair amount. How about, how many of you have seen or been close to ICE activity? Okay, and here's the question. How many of you know people or have seen people that their lives have changed and they live in fear in our city? Okay. Yeah, everybody's impacted, and that was painfully obvious in Springfield this week, where some of my colleagues' lives have changed. Jamie can speak to that better than I. As far as what's happening on the state level, you probably know there's not a lot we can do legislatively, but we are looking at all options and exploring all opportunities to see if there are ways that we can deal with, despite work around the federal preemption, work around the immunity that federal agents generally have, and do something to change our laws that will help address the situation. What we did do this week, while we're still in the planning process, is take a stand against political violence. We did a resolution condemning political violence, attacks on free speech, the weaponization of science with regard to autism and the disability community. And what was the other one we did, Jamie? Well, supporting our constitutional rights.
Right.
I think we passed several resolutions, and honestly, we're used to hearing some debate back and forth with the other side of the aisle, but the stuff that we heard when our colleagues shared stories of families and what they've been through was quite shocking. But we all know that. We've watched the news, we've seen it. So again, I don't have a lot to add yet. We are working and committed to doing anything and everything we can to fight back. I'm grateful for what you've done on the ground. Some people are going to protest. Some people are going to deliver food. Some people are going to be there for their neighbors. You have to do what's right for you, but I'm confident everyone in this room is going to do something to make Chicago a safer place for their neighbors. So thank you. We'll be talking again. We've been working with all local officials and all officials at all levels, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again, having ongoing conversations. So again, thank you so much for being here, and here's Jamie.
So thank you very much. I'm State Rep Jamie Andrade. I have most of this area is new to me, but I just want to say, I want to thank you for my community. I seen this last few months has still brought some faith in humanity, because there's so many people that have stepped up to actually help. And you know, someone says, "Oh, it doesn't affect me," but I want to share a little bit of information with you about how it's going to affect and how it is affecting you. 26th Street produces sales tax almost second to none. Second to none. Michigan Avenue was close, right? They were number one. But 26th Street is, we as a state and the city of Chicago are losing city tax. How does that affect you? They're going to have to find a hole in property taxes, right? Everything is affected by the situation that happens there. $2 billion project for the Red Line affects everyone here. Everyone's affected by that situation. I cannot believe that living in the United States, I lived 2 years in Ecuador, going to school out there, and there was times when, you know, we were going to school where the bus driver says, get down, you know, there's protests and there's fights, we gotta get down. We're in martial law. Never did I think that living here in the United States that threat could be a possibility of going under martial law. So when I tell people that anything is possible, now we actually are living it. We are living in the twilight zone. That what's happening, where people can get stopped when the U.S. Supreme Court, even though it affects only 6 counties in California, ICE agents have felt now empowered that since the U.S. Supreme Court has said you can stop people based on color of skin, and you can stop people if they're speaking another language. Who would have thought that we would regress to those days that is lawful, to stop people based on your language, stop people based on the color of your skin? It's crazy. So I just want to say, I still believe in my community. I believe in my neighbors, and truly help other neighbors like we did. I can't save the world, but we're picking 2 to 3 days for our tamale lady. Our tamale lady is trying to feed her family, support her family. So Elvira and I, my chief of staff, we went, and we had some other help. We went and said, we're going to sell tamales for you. And that's what I ask you to do. If you can help one vendor, one business, that is a domino effect that will help all of us to help there. So I just want to say thank you very much. And we're going to know, everyone needs to know your rights, because U.S. citizens are being stopped right now. So that's the thing. So thank you very much for coming out, and thank you for my community. Yeah.
Before I introduce the next speaker, I want to let you know that my state senator, Sarah Feigenholz, is en route, also from Springfield, and she's been really active organizing walks to schools and everything else, so she'll be here a little bit later. But in the meantime, Senator Graziela Guzman, welcome.
Amazing.
Technical difficulties, sorry friends.
Hi everyone, I'm State Senator Graciela Guzman. My pronouns are she, her, they, yeah. I proudly represent Illinois' 20th District, including parts of the 47th Ward, Albany Park, Belmont Cragen, Logan Square, and Avondale. I want to come to you with like 2 concrete messages that I hope as neighbors we can hear, right? Because we're all here because we love our neighbors, right? We love our neighbors, right? Okay. So, my family escaped the Salvadoran Civil War just before I was born, and I ended up in a community in Los Angeles where families much like ours all kind of lived together. And what I got to live in that era was that mutual aid and connection. That was how we as neighbors got to protect each other and keep each other safe. And it's not a theoretical tenet. On Sunday, I should have been doing laundry and house stuff like it's Sunday times, right? And instead, I was on the streets in Albany Park because ICE had chosen to try to kidnap 2 of my neighbors on Wilson and Sawyer and deploy tear gas against over 60 people. Let's think about that for a moment, because in the midst of all of that chaos, what I can tell you is that people power works. When we are in mass, when we are unified, when we know exactly what to do because we are trained, we can scare ICE away. So what I saw was that ICE actually let one of my neighbors go. They unfortunately took someone else. But what we do know is that when we collectively work together to help protect our neighbors, we can have an impact, not just in how our neighbors will continue to feel that day, that week, that month, but also tactically in the experience of how ICE gets to operate. So I say that to you because the training that you're about to receive is so important when we think about who's on the ground, what you all might get to see, and who might get to make it home that day, right? So just from that perspective, I just want to say it. I've seen it, I've done it, it works. The other thing that I'll say to you is the thousands of messages that are social media. We're doing a lot of work in Spanish and English and in other languages. I'm not used to having my stuff go semi-viral, I'll be honest. It's not a thing for me. However, the messages from neighbors that say, I feel seen, I feel loved, I feel cared for, and I need a neighbor to say that to me right now. That's incredibly powerful. So that needs to come from you as folks that I know love your neighbors, otherwise you wouldn't be in this room on a Thursday evening when you could be watching TV or eating dinner at home, right? So I say that to you because that's also the role of community coming together. And what I will say is the last piece in terms of the additions to what is happening at the state perspective is that we're going to bat for y'all, friends. Our legal community, you're hearing from some of the folks that we have helped fund at the state perspective. That funding we're going to continue to fight for because we know folks need one-on-one assistance and that hasn't gone anywhere. Number 2, I have a sleeve here. I would roll it up, but it's kind of hot. If I could get another tattoo, it would be the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, their family support network hotline. So if you haven't saved it in your phone, it's 855-435-7693. You saving that in your phone literally could be the make it or break it in terms of data that we need. That's 855-435-7693. Oh, I did something funny. Sorry, friends. Check, check, check. Check 1-1. Perdón, perdón. Did I do that?
No, you didn't.
Me?
Oh, it's just running off.
855-435-7693. And the last piece that I'll say in terms of state updates, because we're not done fighting. The Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights is working with our Latino caucus in this moment on an agenda called SALT, safety, action, liberation, together for everybody. And I think it helps espouse a lot of the good practice that we're seeing at the city and at the county. That ICE should not be in our schools, right? Are we in agreement? ICE should not be in our schools. ICE should not be in our hospitals and our healthcare systems, yeah? ICE should not be in our courts. They really shouldn't be anywhere, right? But we're trying to get them out of sensitive locations. So I say that because in addition to the training, there's gonna be some action steps as we as your state electeds return the second week of session at the end of October. So for folks that are interested, the other piece that I'll say about rapid response is the capacity building that our office has been doing in partnerships with many offices. So Know your rights is the foundational step, right? We have to understand our constitutional rights because they're being broken. So we have to understand that so that we can educate ourselves and our neighbors. It's the elementary step as we're in a school, right? The next step is rapid response, understanding your risk and what you can do to help keep a neighbor safe. And within that, there's other little flavors of rapid response. Some of you are already doing school watch. You're helping keep our kiddos safe outside of intersections right now. Some of you are helping walk children from school to home and vice versa. Some of you are starting to design food delivery programs in our community. Point is, many of the solutions that we're asking for are native to this community, but they start with this training. So I say that because in a lot of time of turmoil, sometimes we go, when the hell are we going to get to the thing where I feel productive? So I want to say that because I need you all to be really good students of this training today. The ability of my neighbors to come home may depend on how well you absorb this training today. Our ability to synthesize and think of how creative we're going to be is going to depend on this as a foundational step. So I say that dig in that moment where you're like, it's hot, Graciela. I'm hungry, Graciela. It's time to go home, Graciela. We need to get through this training so that we can do what for our neighbors? So that we can love on our neighbors. Say it with me. So that we can love on our neighbors. So that we can what?
Love on our neighbors.
Thank you so much.
Again, thank you, Senator, for those great words of encouragement. Tonight, we have several organizations that we're offering to help out. One of them that couldn't be here tonight was the ACLU, and we also have Resurrection Project, National Immigrant Justice Center, One Northside, and Central O'Hara. So I'd like to, at this time, to bring up Catherine Greenslade. With the Resurrection Project, and Katarina K. Ramos from National Immigrant Justice Center. Please come up. So we're going to improvise with the mic here.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. I totally forgot.
Yeah, no, I mean, we could just be loud too. Oh my gosh, no, thank you so much for having us, yeah. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me in the back if I just project a little bit? All right. If you can't hear me, let me know. Okay, awesome. You know, we've had to do these in large spaces before. Hopefully my voice makes it. If not, I will jump onto the microphone. I really do just want to start by thanking you all for being here with us tonight. This is so important. I think, we've heard from all of our elected officials how important this is right now. And I do want to thank deeply from the bottom of my heart all of our elected officials and all of you for being here tonight. This is so critical and it is so important. I am going to go over, and Catherine is going to go over with you a little bit about your Know Your Rights presentation. So this is a presentation that we've given a lot in communities, and I want you to take this home with you. These are really important details that any of us can exercise, right? When we are looking at our rights, all of us have rights. It's not just U.S. citizens. It's not just the people who are being targeted by ICE right now. It is all of us. Thank you. Okay. Well, when it does, I'll just shout some more. So I really do just want to start by thanking you all for being here. And, after today, we can also talk about more ways to get involved. But I'm really glad to have you all here with us. So do we want to go ahead and jump into the presentation? So what we're going to go over today, obviously we need to start with an agenda, right? So we're going to just talk a little bit about what your rights are, what your protections you have when you're interacting with law enforcement, not just ICE, but law enforcement in general. We're going to talk about how we can stay safe, but how we can also act confidently. What are ways that we can protect ourselves, our neighbors, our family, what to do if we are approached by ICE. We're also going to talk about preparation. So how can we be prepared? What steps can we take now? What resources can we have engaged before, hopefully, things become too necessary? And then, of course, how can we support each other, which is why you are all here today. So congratulations, you've already met my last objective for the presentation. But we will talk some more about how you can continue to be involved. So when we're talking about law enforcement, there are multiple different players that we are interacting with. The Department of Homeland Security is the one that we hear about the most, right? So this is the US federal agency that oversees immigration, border security, and safety programs. Within DHS, we also have Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So they are enforcing immigration laws. They are many of the officers that we are seeing in our communities now. We also have been seeing other federal law enforcement agencies, right? So I think the Sun-Times was reporting that there are huge numbers of FBI agents and DEA agents and US Marshals who have been seconded into these actions, and so are therefore being used as part of these attacks on our community. We also have our local and state law enforcement. So, that's CPD, that's our state patrol. And I do want to clarify that they are separate from DHS, right? And here in Illinois, we do have the Trust Act. In the city of Chicago, we have the Welcoming City Ordinance. And all of these pieces of legislation are essentially establishing that CPD, that state troopers should not be assisting ICE in these actions, that we are a safe, welcoming community, we are a safe, welcoming state, and that we want to make sure that our local law enforcement are not engaged in these ICE actions. Sorry, can you go ahead? So that being said, what are we looking for when we're coming in contact with people? This is a really great infographic that Borderless put together that we really enjoy. So when we're seeing ICE agents on the street, a lot of times they're in plain clothes. They're almost always wearing face masks. They are wearing vests that may say police on them, even though they're not technically police officers. And when we've raised this with DHS before, they have told us that police is a uniform term for law enforcement, and that is how they are explaining why they are wearing clothing that identifies them as police. Sometimes we're seeing them with badges or with vests that may have what their other agency is, so it may be ICE, maybe the FBI, DHS, Homeland Security Investigations is HSI. So this is who we're seeing a lot of the action from right now. Now, one of the things that I always want to make sure our community members know is how to tell the difference between CPD and ICE, right? So when we're looking at a Chicago police officer, I think we all know, right? They're usually wearing those lovely blue shirts. They've got the checker patterns. They've got their stars. They're really easy for us to identify. They are the officers that we see on a regular basis. And again, Illinois law enforcement shouldn't be working with DHS. So if someone in our community is afraid, we do want them to be able to go to CPD and seek help. We do want them to be able to go to the domestic violence courthouse and get an order of protection. So we want to make sure that we still have this faith in our community. Thankfully, it was stayed, and I think the stay was renewed again this afternoon, but we do know that there has been talk about bringing the National Guard into Chicago. So we do also have, how are we identifying what National Guard members look like, what their uniforms are, if they're going to be carrying weapons, things like that. Hopefully we will continue to get these court orders that will stay the National Guard from coming into our city, though. Can you go ahead and next slide? So what is the process that our neighbors and our community is going through? There's sort of two different processes that may happen. And so we have both of them on here. The majority of our neighbors right now, unfortunately, are going through the first process. So someone is being arrested. They're being detained by ICE. They're being picked up on the street. From there, they're taken to Broadview, which is a DHS ICE processing center. And so they're staying at Broadview while they are being put into the DHS system. They're being assigned an identification number, fingerprints are being taken. This is taking on average about 3 days that we're seeing people detained at Broadview. From there, they are very often being transferred to a detention center. We don't have detention centers here in the state of Illinois. That was also part of the Illinois Trust Act. However, unfortunately, some of our neighbor states do still have detention centers. In general, we are seeing our neighbors, however, being sent to detention centers all across the country. We have a client in my office who was sent to Michigan today. I have a very good friend whose father was sent to Port Isabel, Texas, which is about as far south in Texas as you can go before you reach Mexico. So all over the country, we're really seeing people being transferred. And so this is a really important step too, is just identifying which detention center our neighbors and our family members are in. A lot of people right now are not being found eligible for bond. So if someone has entered the United States without inspection, the current administration is saying that they are not eligible for bond and that they're going to be detained throughout the life of their case. And then there's sort of two options that might happen. If they've been in the United States for less than 2 years, or they can't prove that they've been here for more than 2 years, we're seeing ICE and the department using what's called expedited removal orders or expedited deportation orders. So they're using this ability to say that you've been here less than 2 years, you don't have your right to have your hearing in front of a judge, you therefore must leave the United States. Or they may have a chance to fight their immigration legal case. Now, if they have been detained, they are detained through this entire process. So while they are fighting their case, they are still detained in a jail. And if I'm being very honest with you, one of the things we hear the most from our clients is how the jails are really wearing people down, how being incarcerated while you are fighting out your case really wears you down and makes you not want to fight. And we have heard from clients who've said, I just can't be in jail anymore. I'd rather be sent back. I'd rather risk my life than continue to be in this jail cell. And it's really heartbreaking to hear that. The other path, which we do see, starts similarly, right? So we still have the arrest, we have processing, and then they're put in a detention center and they might be given a bond hearing. Just so you know, for immigration purposes, you have to pay the entire bond. So if you have a criminal bond, you only have to pay a certain percentage of it. For immigration purposes, you have to pay the entire bond in order to be released. And then from there, once you've been released on bond, you can continue to fight your immigration case. Now, the positive side is if you have bond, you are not in jail while you are fighting your case, but I have clients who have been fighting their cases now for 7, 8 years because the backlog with our courts is so extreme. And so for this entire time, they don't know when they're going to have to leave, if what's going to happen. Their lives are very much on hold. I've had clients tell me they were afraid to have children because they didn't know if they were going to be staying in the United States or not for years. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide? So what can we do when we have contact with these officers and with these agents? What can we do when we have contact with law enforcement in general, right? We have our Miranda rights. We've all seen, I'm sure, Law and Order, some police procedural, I'm sure we've all seen some Dick Wolf protection, right? So we have those basic Fifth Amendment rights, and we have our Fourth Amendment rights and our Sixth Amendment rights, and those are really important. So when we're coming in contact with any law enforcement, but particularly with DHS and with ICE, the most important right to exercise is your right to remain silent. If there is a chance that you are being detained, you want to exercise that right to remain silent. Now, you need to affirmatively state, I wish to remain silent. You have to say that. But once you have said that, you have exercised that right. They should not be asking you any other questions, and anything that you say that they would use, anything that they would try and get out of you, you may be able to contest that. We have, the right to privacy in our homes and our cars, right? Our home is our castle. That's a very American, everyday saying, right? A man's home is his castle. But that is really important, right? An ICE officer should not come into our homes. You do not need to open the door and let them into your home, all right? This is really important because they need to have a signed judicial warrant, and one of my slides in a minute will show you what that warrant looks like. If they don't have that warrant, they can't come into your home. So if an ICE officer does come to your door, they are knocking at the door, don't open the door, but say, show me the warrant. I need to see a warrant. We have heard that they are not always respecting that. And if that is the case, we do want you to reach out to organizations like our organizations, like ICER, the Family Support Network, the ACLU. Those are all things that we need to know about as well. Another thing that is really important is that we're making sure that we're not signing anything. A lot of times what I have seen is people are handed papers, they're all in English, and they may not speak English, and they're told, oh, just sign that and you can go home. Well, they don't really mean home here in Chicago. They mean home in whatever country they might have come from originally. So we're really advocating for people, do not sign anything, especially if you don't understand it, and ask to speak with an attorney. It's really important that people have that legal representation. Now, one thing I do want to note is, in the criminal justice system, right, you have the right to an attorney and one will be appointed to you by the court of law. That is not the case for immigration. You have to find your own attorney. Thankfully, here in Illinois, we do have the META network. We have a number of networks where we are trying to provide representation through, the generous funding from the state, from the city of Chicago, really trying to make sure that we are providing people with attorneys, but they still need to reach out to us. We still need to have that contact with them. Another thing is really important is that you do still get your local phone call. So, make sure you memorize a phone number. I think I am guilty of this. I could probably rattle off all of my best friends' parents' phone numbers from the 90s. But I could barely tell you anybody's phone numbers today because my cell phone does all my thinking for me, right? So make sure that you are memorizing a phone number, that you have a safe contact, somebody that you can reach out to if you do come in contact with law enforcement, if you are detained. Because as much as I love my best friend's mother, I don't think she's going to be able to help me particularly. She would probably try very hard. But make sure that you have somebody that you do trust. I honestly don't even know if that phone is still in operation, so that's another aspect. A couple things to keep in mind, though. Those local phone numbers are not private, okay? So when they are calling, someone is calling from a detention center, a local phone call can be recorded by ICE. So anything that is said on those phone calls can be used against the person who is fighting their case. Attorney calls can be privileged and should be privileged, but it's really important when you are having those conversations with somebody who is detained that you're not talking about their immigration status, that you're not talking about anything that's going to put them in a worse position, right? So countries that they're from, anything like that. Those calls are important though, right? I mean, they are a really good way to build up morale, build up support. We want to know that our family, that our neighbors, that our communities are fighting for us, that we have them on our sides. So those calls really are important. We just need to be careful when we're having them, not to say anything that could make the situation worse. Sorry. So I was talking about warrants. These are some sample warrants. So this is what we are seeing a lot of, which ICE has, which is called an administrative warrant. I think this is still my slide, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. So this is an administrative warrant. Essentially, ICE officers are filling this out and saying that this is a warrant and that therefore they can use it to detain somebody. A couple things I want to point out. I know it's kind of blurry on here, but this warrant isn't signed by a judge, right? We need to have our warrant signed by judges. This is signed by an immigration officer or an ICE officer. So if it's not signed by a judge, it's not a valid warrant. And that's something that's really important and that we need to remember as we're fighting for our neighbors. So when you see videos online of people yelling, let me see the warrant, I need to see the warrant, that's part of what they're asking to see. Another thing that we've heard recently, we did get a court injunction on this last week, ICE was filling out these warrants after they had arrested people. So they would arrest them, detain them, and then fill out a warrant and say, well, we had a warrant for them. Thankfully, we did get litigation on this, and they have been told they have to stop doing that. That will be grounds for future litigation, I'm sure. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide for me? So this is what a judicial warrant will look like, right? So when you're trying to understand what it is, it's going to say very clearly at the front, right? It's the U.S. District Court has issued this warrant. It's going to have the person's name, their address. All of that needs to be spelled right, by the way, for it to be a valid warrant. If it's not spelled right, if they have the wrong address, that's not a valid warrant. And then the really important thing that we're going to want to establish, it's got a time date, a time period that it's valid. It's going to say it's valid for 14 days from the issuance of this document. If it's outside those 14 days, it's no longer a valid warrant. They have to go back to the judge and get a new warrant, okay? And then again, the main piece is that it is signed by a judge. So it's going to say that it's signed by a judge, a justice, a magistrate, something like that that's going to make it really clear to us that these are signed and valid official warrants. I will be honest, we don't see a lot of these here in Chicago. I don't know that we've seen any here in Chicago. So when we're saying that it's really important that people have these warrants, this is why, because this is honestly one of our main pieces of protection. If an officer doesn't have this warrant, they don't come in your house, all right? And have them hold it up to the window, have them slide it under the door if they say they have a warrant. Don't open the door. We don't want them to think we're inviting them into our homes. But this is the document that they need to have if they're going to come into your home, okay? And then for you guys to see, we do have them sort of next to each other so you can kind of see a comparison of how they look. So the one on the left, again, is our official judicial warrant. It's got our lovely heading. It's got all of our very fancy court language. The one on the right is that administrative warrant that we were seeing being used by DHS officers. Okay. This is still me too, yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I lost track of my slides. So what are we talking about when we are at home, right? Because we've been talking about these warrants. As I have said, you are not required to open that door for law enforcement unless they have that signed judicial warrant. And I think it's also really important, just a reminder, we don't want our kids running to open the door, right? I think, my godkids, as soon as somebody rings the door, they're right there, right? They want to see who it is. So making sure when we're talking to our children that our children know not to answer the door without a grown-up nearby. Make sure that we have somebody who is making sure that we are, only opening the door in safe situations. If ICE does force their way in, because we have heard of that happening, right? Don't resist. It's really important that we don't resist. We're going to stay calm. We're going to exercise our right to remain silent, right? And just, take note of what is happening if you can, because it's a very high stress environment and you may not remember. But, how many people were there? What were they wearing? What contact did they have? Did they have that warrant? What did they say? Things like that are really important, and we may be able to use them in litigation cases later to try and help people get out of proceedings. And again, because I'm going to be the broken record on this, if you are arrested, we're exercising the right to remain silent, and we're not signing anything until you talk to a lawyer. And I'm not just saying that because I am a lawyer. I'm saying that because it's important. All right? So they have to show it to be able to enter the home.
Just the person on?
So generally what we say is if they do have a warrant and it is a properly exercised warrant, they show it to whoever is the person who answers the door, and what we would say is that whoever's named in the warrant steps out of the house and tries to therefore put themselves in a position where they are surrendering without endangering anybody else who might be in the home. If the person who is not named in the warrant isn't home, though, they shouldn't be able to come into the house. Right? Yeah.
Traffic stops different?
Traffic stops are complicated.
That's our next slide.
But that is our next slide if we want to go to it. Thank you for the segue.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, at work is our next
Oh, at
slide.
work, yeah. Uh-huh.
We'll get to
Child answers the door and lets them in. Does that make a difference because of the age?
It's a great question. Sure, the question was if a child answers the door and a child lets them in, does that make a difference because of the child's age and acknowledging that the child may not be old enough to understand the consequences of what they did? I would love to say that in legal theory, yes, it should make a difference. I don't know that we're seeing that currently in practice. I think once the door is open, they are taking that as an invitation to enter the home. Yeah.
How do you know a signature on a warrant is legitimate?
Ooh. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to question if it's a judge's warrant. I don't know how we would be able to do that. I think at that point, we just sort of have to hope that it is.
I would just add, there's so few judicial warrants anywhere. Most of them are the unsigned administrative warrant or no warrant at all. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. Yes?
Would it be a good idea to take a photo of the warrant for later?
Oh, for sure, if you can, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know that when, for instance, if you're out in the neighborhood and, we recognize that something is going down, I think that might be a question of, am I, as a bystander, if this person isn't asking or something, am I allowed to say, do you have a warrant? Especially when these people aren't really identifying themselves, I don't know the difference between that and a predator. So
Yeah, no, you can definitely say, do you have a warrant? I would like to, can I see the warrant? Can you show them the warrant? You can definitely ask if there's a warrant. And I know one of the things we'll also talk about is, what can you do in those situations? Being able to record is really important, even just getting that record so we know what's happening. I think in the gray sweater, or this gray sweatshirt, I think you were next?
So the administrative warrant has no authority.
No.
It's just a fabricated document.
It is not a warrant signed by a judge. It is not a judicial warrant. It does not have the authority to allow them to enter your home. Yeah. Yes.
Does an ICE agent face any kind of penalty for using something that's not valid?
That's a great question, and it's a case that we're taking through the courts right now. So I don't really know in practice how that's going to work. The question was, does an ICE agent face any sort of penalty if they use a document that's not valid? Yes.
Can people who are arrested be deprived of their cell phone?
Yes, and they will
Yes.
be. Their cell phones will be taken from them. All of their belongings will be taken from them. They will essentially be processed as if they were a criminal. Put in, the orange jumpsuits or the brown jumpsuits. All of their possessions will be taken from them. They will need to have a fund set up for them to be able to make phone calls out even. Yes, in the back.
Can you call 911 and have the local cops show up and somehow rescue you?
Oh, that's above my pay grade.
You should call the FSN
Yes.
ICER OCAD hotline, which will appear on the slides again,
But the one that Graciela was also shouting,
Yes.
Senator Guzman was shouting.
because that activates like rapid response people who can come out.
I know there's a lot of questions. I want to just keep moving through the slides because we may answer some of your questions as we keep going. So what happens if you're at work and an ICE officer comes to your work? So it's really important to know that there's a distinction, right? So if there's a public area of your work, ICE agents can enter the public areas of your work. However, if there are just being in that area doesn't give them the authority to stop and question and arrest just anyone, right? They still need to have that judicial warrant to be able to stop someone. It's particularly important if there's a private area of your office, right? So if you look at my office, we have our waiting area, it's open to the public, and then we have behind doors the area where we are actually working. And that is the private area of our office. And we are not going to let an ICE agent into the private area of our office. They are not allowed into that area. It is really important to know that it's really up to an employer whether or not they're going to allow an officer into those private areas with or without a warrant. So as we are, in our communities, making sure that if we're seeing something going down in a business, that we are protecting our neighbors, right? We're encouraging those business owners, don't let them in. Don't let them in the back. They don't have a document. And remember, again, we're standing together and we are staying silent. And yeah.
I would also add, it's important in workspaces to delineate those public and private spaces. So like in our office, we have clearly marked like private space, like just so that it's easy to tell. And then it can be like, this is private space, you can't come in. Yeah.
And then one thing I am going to say, oh yeah.
If I own a restaurant, can I put private at the kitchen?
Yeah, and there's a lot of restaurant owners who do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there are signs, yes. 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 No, they need to have a specific person that they are looking for. Yeah. And then one thing I do just want to flag, it's really important not to carry false documents. It's really important right now to carry valid documents. I think we all saw the story of there was a man who was fined, I think it was $150 for not carrying his green card. But it's really important that we're not carrying false documents. It's really important that we're not making false claims to US citizenship. There is almost no way to get out of deportation. There are very few exceptions if you claim that you're a US citizen. So even if you're scared, it's really better to just stay silent rather than try and say you're a US citizen if you are not a US citizen. Okay. Yeah.
Real quick, is it okay to carry copies of your documents, or should you carry the original as well?
This is like a much debated, I feel like. I would say carry copies, because if you are detained, they will take your
documents.
documents. Or
If you are a U.S. citizen and have a passport, you can apply for the passport card. And so, for example, as a naturalized citizen, I am now carrying my passport card.
Yeah.
Because if they take that away, I don't really care. I still have my actual passport.
Right.
And it costs like $10 or something to get the extra card.
And I would say if you are carrying the actual documents, make sure there's copies of them somewhere, and that someone you trust knows where those copies are.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
In public places.
Public places. Okay. So this is where it gets fun. Not really. So if we are out in public places, right, technically an ICE officer does not need a warrant to be in a public place. In Illinois, we do have the Castañeda-Nava settlement, which essentially says they cannot be making warrantless arrests in public places. Now, we know that's being violated, and again, that's the subject of a lot of litigation right now. If ICE stops you and you're walking on the street, you're not required to show identification. You're not required to answer those questions. Generally, what I suggest you do is just say, am I under arrest? Am I being detained? Am I free to go? And if they say, no, you are not being detained, you just exercise that right to remain silent. If they say you are being detained, you're exercising your right to remain silent. And then if you are allowed to leave, you're just very calmly walking away. I know it's very nerve-wracking to be in that situation. However, we don't want to be running, right? Because really what we're looking at is making sure that we're not giving probable cause for people to be detained, right? They're looking for a reason to detain you out in public. So if you're running, they might say, well, what are you running from? So we're very calmly walking away. Okay. And again, I know I just said carry documentation. The documentation I don't want you to carry is any documentation that would say you're not from the United States. All right, because that is obviously probable cause that they can then use to detain you. Yeah.
People carrying licenses that indicate, because you can have a legal license and not be a citizen. Does that mean it's risky to be carrying that license?
So they can ask to see another form of ID if you have that license. In Illinois, we talk about the TVDL on here in traffic stops, but also in Illinois, right now you can just get a driver's license that is regardless of what your status is. It's not a real ID, valid driver's license, but you are able to get that. So that's the license I have. I don't have a real ID. I carry a regular state of Illinois driver's license. So do I. Yeah. So they can ask to see another form of identification. But generally we're still advocating, like, don't answer questions about your immigration status. And that comes up. Yeah.
For folks who have like DACA or permanent residence, what is the risk of not showing that ID and trying to, like, say, assert that right to privacy, with them potentially then harassing them or taking them because they're not cooperating?
Yeah, that is definitely a risk. And if you're not showing those documents, then they can try and argue that you are undocumented. So just a couple things, again, when you are driving, try not to open your car door, open the windows unless ICE has that valid judicial warrant. Traffic stops in your vehicle are a very murky area because they always want to make the argument that you were trying to flee just by being in your vehicle. In Illinois, we do have, again, litigation and a settlement that says they should not be making that argument. But again, you're wanting to see those judicial warrants. You're trying to record and make sure that somebody has, access to this information of whatever your stop is. Yeah.
I went through this for 3 hours on Sunday. And you're making me think it was ICE. It was horrible. Anyhow, I want you to know that I was denied. There was no asking ID. I had called the police because, someone is in my home still. And they said
it's really bad right now.
They left me, as far as going in the house, they forbid me to go in my house.
Yeah.
So remember this from then, your documents, one thing, don't.
Mhm.
But you lose all.
Yeah, it's horrifying. I'm really sorry you went through that. I'm really sorry. Yeah.
I think we gotta keep it moving.
Yeah. Can we go ahead and move on to the next slide?
I think it's this where I'm
Yeah, I think this
taking
is you.
over. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I can't remember. We divided the slides in half. So, okay. So, what can escalate ICE encounters, right? We want to avoid lying, as Kate mentioned. We want to avoid lying to officers. You don't want to give false names, documents, or information. Again, running away can be seen as they can take that as grounds for probable cause to detain or to use force. So if possible, we want to try to walk away calmly. Using violence or threats such as yelling, pushing, breaking windows, resisting physically tend to escalate ICE encounters. Aggressive arguing, refusing to follow clear lawful instructions. We don't want to be impersonating local police or showing fake badges or IDs. That is extremely illegal and can lead to a lot of consequences. Refusing lawful orders in a vehicle. So if you're the driver and law enforcement stops you, you do need to, and asks you to step out of the car, you do need to do that. They can ask you for your driver's license, license, registration, proof of insurance. We've all had that. The passengers in the vehicle do not have to provide ID, but that driver does. And you do need to have a valid driver's license if you're the one driving the car. Also, we don't want to sign anything without understanding what it is, because it may count as consent or an admission. Yes? Okay, so we want, if the police pull you over and they ask you, it's a legit traffic stop, and they ask you to show your license, to get out of the car, those are like lawful directions from the police officer. You do need to abide by them. This is part of the litigation that's going on. ICE is not supposed to be making traffic stops, although we do see overwhelmingly that that is what they are doing. And we have seen when folks refuse ICE in those situations, they are breaking windows and pulling people out of their car.
So generally, one thing that we would advise is if you do have a traffic stop and you don't know who has stopped you, you can ask, are you ICE or are you CPD? Or ask them to identify themselves.
Or to see a badge.
Show you a badge, something like that. If they are CPD, if they are local law enforcement, they are going to identify themselves as such. If they are ICE, they should identify themselves as such, but I think we've all also seen the videos where they're not always doing that. So that's really a big distinction. So if they are clearly identifying themselves as local law enforcement, then you need to follow their instructions as if it was any other traffic stop.
I guess this might be a hard question, but is there a term or court case that we can reference for other people in the car that references, like, you can't ask them for their ID, they're not driving?
I think in that case, you would just, everyone in the car should exercise their right to remain silent, right? And I'm sorry, just for purposes of time, if we could try to hold questions till the end, because I think we'll get some of the answers, hopefully, in some of these slides. Okay, so again, we want to try to be calm and polite, but affirm asserting your rights. Remember, you do need to vocally say, I wish to remain silent, and then you can remain silent after that. With no warrant, you do not have to consent to search of your possessions or your vehicle. You can say that you do not consent to a search. And then, again, choosing to remain silent, and you want to speak to a lawyer. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so what happens if you are detained by ICE? Once you're detained, some of those rules around whether or not you want to share information with them might be slightly different. You're going to be fingerprinted So whether you give them your name or not, they're probably going to eventually come up with your name. You may want to provide them with your name and date of birth also because you go into something called the detainee locator system. And the longer it takes them to identify who you are may make it take longer for your family members to be able to find you in the system. Excuse me, sorry. If you have a 9-digit A number, okay, so anybody who's ever had any contact with the Border Patrol, ever applied for an immigration benefit, any contact with the immigration system is gonna have an A number. Folks who don't have an A number will be given one, but if you already have one, try to have that memorized, because that's another way that a family member is gonna be able to find you in the system, or an attorney is gonna be able to find you faster in the system if you are able to speak to one and you can give them your A number. You wanna ask, thank you, ask to speak to an attorney. You can make calls, but there are charges, and much like criminal jails, family has to be able to either collect calls or add money to like a commissary so that people can make phone calls. We already talked about this, but the family lines are not secure and they're not private, so we only really want to talk about immigration matters on the attorney lines. If you are afraid of returning to your home country, you need to tell as many people as you can that you are afraid of returning to your home country, because then you can get something called either a credible fear or a reasonable fear interview, which in certain cases is really important because it may be the person's only opportunity to see an immigration judge. Next slide. Okay, so again, if a family member or a friend is detained by ICE, the locator.ice.gov is where you can go to try to find which detention center they've been sent to. You need their country of origin and their A number, or their full legal name, date of birth, and country of origin. And then you put those into the website and it will pop up where the person is located. While people are at Broadview, which is a processing center, even though they've been holding people there for days at a time, they are not in this ICE detainee locator system. So it can sometimes take upwards of 4 or 5 days, maybe up to a week sometimes, to find people because they're not in the system yet. For those who are originally from Mexico, that's the emergency contact number for the Mexican consulate. The Mexican consulate is able to assist families and folks who are detained who are at Broadview, or who are being held at Broadview. So if you have family members or friends who, for example, need medication and you know that they're at Broadview, you can reach out to the Mexican consulate and they may be able to get those medications to the person at Broadview. It's really important, and we encourage everybody to have an emergency family plan. That includes childcare arrangements, possibly temporary guardianship for your kids. Any medications, it includes somebody knowing where all those important documents are, so not just your identity documents, but things like access to bank accounts or information about your home or things like that. And you want to be able to call somebody, because you've memorized at least one, but ideally more than one phone number, of somebody who can put this plan in place. These are really hard things to talk about, especially I think with children and families, but it's important to have the plans in place because they're much harder to put in place after the person has already been detained. So it's good to make a plan in advance and hopefully never need it. As we mentioned, almost nobody is bond eligible anymore, but if they are, you do have to pay 100% of the bond, and the bond needs to be paid by somebody with status. And then, as part of that emergency family planning, I would just say it's also a good time to think about like resources and if you do need to pay bond or attorney's fees, or how the family is going to be supported if the person who is the primary breadwinner is detained. You can go to the next slide. As we said, there are no detention centers in Illinois. So when folks are arrested in Illinois, they are sent out of state. Or, in times of low detention, folks were ending up mainly in in Wisconsin, Indiana, and Kentucky. We are now seeing people sent all over the country. A lot of them are in the Midwest, but we also see a lot of folks ending up in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and other places. So what can you do if someone has been detained? If you go to trpimmigrantjustice.org, we have a form that can be filled out. If folks fill out the form, the reporter, whoever filled out the form, will get a call back within 24 to 48 hours from somebody who will help get more information if you have it, and then we'll also put that person in a queue to hopefully receive free legal services, or at least a call from someone that's part of our network of nonprofit organizations that are trying to represent folks who are detained. There's that number again, 855-435-7693. You can also report there if someone has been detained, or if you see ICE activity. So if you see ICE activity, again, that activates like a rapid response network. You want to call and report there. For folks who are eligible for bond, there is something called the Midwest Bond Fund that can sometimes help support paying bonds. But again, almost no one is eligible for bond these days. I think we're going to just skip this one because we've sort of already talked about the difference between police and ICE and other federal enforcement. But just as a reminder, local police, so that's all state, local, county, should not be cooperating with ICE or other federal agents in any sort of ICE enforcement. In Illinois, because of the Trust Act, local police cannot hold someone. So if somebody's arrested on a criminal matter, they cannot hold someone for ICE to then come pick them up. And then, in Chicago, we have sanctuary city laws, and then the state also has some sanctuary laws that protect from local government cooperation. And then again, there's the number to report violations there on the bottom. Okay, I think we can move past this one. Okay, so let's talk about filming law enforcement encounters, because this is something you can do as a bystander, and I think something that's important to go over. So you do have the right to record police and ICE if you are a bystander. You want to take your own safety into consideration in these situations, so awareness is really important. You want to assess your risk. You want to stand and film from a safe distance. It's really helpful for folks who might be using those recordings later if you can narrate what's happening. So where are you? I'm at the intersection of whatever and whatever. What are you seeing? Because sometimes it may seem really clear to you while you're filming it, but somebody who's watching it later, it's less clear. So you want to film from a safe distance, and you want to talk about what you're seeing, dates, times, locations, and what is happening. Because sometimes these things, as Kate mentioned with this lawsuit that has to do with how ICE is arresting folks, some of these videos may be helpful later in getting folks out of detention. If they ask you to stop filming, or they ask you to back up, it is at your discretion, but you do want to, again, keep your own safety in consideration. You can back up, you can pause filming. You have to sort of think about what is best for you in those situations. Landscape, not this way, okay? We want a wider shot when you're filming. And then we do want to protect the privacy of persons who are being detained. So we don't necessarily want them shouting out like their name and where they're from or things like that. What is more helpful is to get the name and phone number of someone you can call for them. Who is their family member? Who is their friend that can be notified of what has happened? Okay, next slide. Okay, things you can say when you're recording, that you're just making sure no one's rights are being violated, that you are watching from a reasonable distance. You can, say, I am a reasonable distance away, or I'm a safe distance away. You're now violating my rights if they're getting in your space, right? If you're asked to step back, you should step back, okay? Because again, we want to remain calm. We don't want to escalate encounters with ICE, particularly as we see them escalating the violence that's happening in the city. But you can remind them that you are exercising your right, which you do have here in Illinois, to record what is happening and to document police activity, okay? These are just, again, some reminders of resources. There's a great website that the state of Illinois has put together, illinoisimmigrationinfo.org. There are ways that you can volunteer through the website. There are tons of resources. There are links and information about some of the nonprofit organizations that are doing a lot of this work. And then, again, there's that number 855-435-7693, which is to report ICE activity. That's the ICE or Family Support Line. So other things we have on the tables out there, and please, I encourage you to take as many materials as you want, but we have door signs that can be put up in businesses. I would not recommend that folks put them up in their home. It's if you have people in your home who may be at risk of being detained by ICE, you don't really want to, like, sometimes it serves more as like an attractor, right? But businesses can put up this information about exercising their rights, or neighbors who are supporting can put up this information. Next slide. We have these cards out on the table out there too. They're really easy to pass out. We have them in both English and in Spanish. They have that support line on the front, and the QR code links to the website I just mentioned that has a bunch of free resources. If folks have those, they can use that and to say they are choosing to remain silent and exercise their rights by having the card. Next slide. Okay, so we also have these. I encourage people to take these if they're, I think they're super helpful because they have a QR code for each of your needs, right? So I'm witnessing ICE activity. What should you do? You can call the number, okay? Someone I know has been detained. That QR code will take you to the detained loved one form, which I said if you fill that out, you as a reporter will get a call back from somebody within 24 to 48 hours to help get more information and figure out what's going on. Folks who have an upcoming check-in with ICE or ISAP. There are lots of people here who have, as sort of a routine matter, periodic check-ins with ICE. Up until recently, it is a very routine matter. They go check in with ICE, they get a date to come back in 6 months, they come back in 6 months, they do it again, on and on. Lots of folks are now being detained when they go in for those routine check-ins. So we do offer services that connect folks to help prep them for those appointments, and then also connect them with pro bono attorneys who can accompany them to those appointments. There's a QR code for that there. And then same thing, I have an upcoming court hearing. People can register for an appointment to meet with somebody and again be connected to somebody who can accompany them to their upcoming hearing. If you'd like to request any of these trainings, you can scan the QR code and fill out a form to request a training. We do Know Your Rights. We have trainings about protecting your assets. We have trainings about emergency family planning and how to prepare and fill those out. If you are a business owner or work at a business that would like organizational readiness training, we also offer those. And then small business readiness training. So QR code is on the bottom. It will take you to a form that you can fill out to request the type of training you are interested in. And then, unfortunately, in the immigration space, there is a ton of fraud, okay? There are lots of bad actors who will pretend to be attorneys, will promise, things that they can't, make good on, and take money from folks. So if it seems too good to be true, especially these days, it probably is. We really encourage that people get a second opinion. And that, if they're getting solicited on like WhatsApp or some other means by somebody who claims to be an attorney and can help that they be very leery of that. And then you can also report fraud at the Office of the Illinois Attorney General. So that's, you know, if you suspect that there's immigration fraud or unauthorized practice of law by somebody who's not an immigration attorney or an attorney at all, you can make a complaint there. I think. Okay, so I think that's it.
Sorry. I think, just in the interest of time, because we've, oh, sorry, do you mind?
Yes.
We've gone a little long. I think we're going to, Catherine and I can be available to answer questions afterwards. But I know Senator Feinholz is also here and would like to speak. So I want to make sure that we give her time as well. Okay. Sorry.
Oh, that's totally fine. It's 6, I know, and it's a lot of material.
Thank you. Let's give another round of applause to our awesome attorneys, Katerina and Catherine. That was pretty outstanding, and I think when we think about the people that are doing the yeoman's work, the great effort to make sure that we're all aware of our constitutional rights, these two women are doing an outstanding job day in and day out. So thank you again. Right now, I just want to hand it off to Senator Feinholz to say a few words.
Thank you, Alderman. Thank you. I too want to thank the Restoration Project and ICER. I know that people have to know that the presence of ICER in Springfield is humongous, and the work that they do, it's irreplaceable, and we wouldn't be here without them and the Resurrection Project. Let's give it up again. They are putting this together, they are organizing. I have been to 2 or 3 of these already, and I also want to say how grateful I am for a full room of community members, many of whom are just as pissed off as I am and everyone else is about what's going on and how committed we are to preserving our democracy and how we're not going to take this. We are going to fight back and protect our neighbors, aren't we? Everybody's very worried about the state of our democracy, and justifiably so. We really, really have to help our neighbors, and so I am grateful. Our office is spending a great deal of time getting volunteers to our schools. Keep doing what you do, because it's really, really all about our community. Thank you. Thank you, Alderman, for putting this together.
Thank you, Senators, state reps, and commissioners. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. We do need to vacate the auditorium, so if we have any conversations, grab some things off the tables, and let's go outside and enjoy the weather a little bit to do a little more Q&A. And thank every one of you for keeping our Constitution strong and our democracy safe. Thanks, and have a good night.